My name is Ruth Ellen Harper, and I am 86 years old. I have lived in the Appalachian Mountains my whole life, and I suppose these hills know more about me than any person ever has. They watched me grow from a barefoot girl chasing fireflies into a woman who learned too early what it means to love someone you can't keep. Some stories age like wood, slowly, quietly, gathering weight. Mine is one of them. When I was a girl, our town was little more than a handful of houses tucked between ridges. Winters were long, summers were thick with heat, and life moved at a pace that made you think the mountains themselves were breathing. Folks lived hard, prayed hard, worked hard. And love, well, love came softly, like fog drifting into the valley at dawn. That's how it came for me. His name was Samuel Ward. Yes, another Samuel. Life has a way of repeating itself in strange patterns. But this Samuel was nothing like the others you might imagine. He was quiet, almost too quiet. Even as a boy, he carried a seriousness in his eyes that didn't belong to children. We grew up side by side, climbing the same trees, fishing in the same creek, skipping stones that looked like little worlds. He hardly ever smiled, but when he did, it felt like the sun broke through the fog. I didn't know then what that meant, but I learned. By the time I turned 16, something had shifted between us. The space where childhood used to be had become something heavier, softer. Whenever he walked me home from school, his steps slowed just a little near my porch. Whenever he looked at me, I saw something unspoken in his eyes, like a story he didn't know how to tell. One evening, while the cicadas droned like they were singing for their lives, he asked if I wanted to walk the ridge with him. We climbed until we reached the overlook, the place where the whole valley spread out like an old quilt. The sky was purple, the kind of color that looks like it belongs to a different world. And there, with his hands shaking more than the breeze, he told me he loved me. Not with a grand speech, not with poetry, just 2 words. I'm yours. I didn't answer at first. I couldn't. I felt something inside me fall into place so softly it scared me. But I reached for his hand and held it, and that was enough. We sat there until the stars blinked awake, wrapped in a silence that felt like prayer. For a while, life felt perfect. We were young, yes, but we were steady. He'd fix fences for my father, bring me jars of river stones he polished himself, sit beside me in church, though he rarely said a word. Everyone knew we were meant for each other, except Samuel. He never believed he deserved good things. I could see it in the way he looked at the ground too much, the way he stiffened whenever someone complimented him. I'd tell him, "You're enough, Sam," and he'd smile, but it was a sad smile, the kind that says, "I wish I believed you." Then came the draft. The letter arrived in early winter, when the hills were bare and the wind felt like it carried warnings. Samuel didn't speak when he opened it, just stared at the paper as though the words were clawing their way off the page. I remember touching his arm and whispering, "We'll get through this." But I don't think he believed that either. He left on a cold gray morning. No music, no crowd, just me and his mother standing by the road as he climbed into the back of a truck with other boys who looked too young to hold rifles. He kissed my forehead and said, "I'll come back to you, I promise." But even then I heard the tremble in his voice. The first year he wrote often, not long letters, but enough to let me know he was still holding on. He described the heat, the noise, the fear he couldn't name. He told me he kept my handkerchief in his pocket, said the thought of me was the only thing that felt real over there. Then the letters slowed. Then they stopped. For nearly a year, silence settled over me like a second skin. Every knock on the door made my heart freeze. Every stranger walking up the road felt like a shadow carrying news I wasn't ready to hear. Folks whispered, "He's gone." I refused to believe them. But some part of me broke anyway. 3 years after he left, he finally came home. But not the Samuel I knew. This Samuel walked with a limp. He rarely lifted his eyes. The boy who used to blush when I looked at him now looked past me like he was staring into another world. His mother wept when she saw him. I didn't. I just stood there, hands trembling, trying to find pieces of the boy I loved inside the man who stood before me. He wouldn't talk about the war, wouldn't talk about anything. Some nights I'd hear him walking the ridge alone, boots crunching on gravel until dawn. He had lost so much weight, lost so much of himself. But I stayed. I tried. For months, I tried. I sat with him in silence, held his hand when he let me, made him food he barely touched, told him stories from my childhood to remind him there was a world before the darkness. But trauma has sharp edges, and love cannot always reach through them. One evening, standing on the same ridge where he once told me he loved me, he said, "Ruth, I'm not the man you're waiting for anymore. I don't think he survived." I cried, not loud, just quietly, like the mountains were listening. He brushed the tears from my face with a tenderness that felt almost like goodbye. And it was. The next morning, he was gone. He left no note, took no belongings, just walked away into the early mist, the same way the fog steals the valleys at dawn. People searched, days passed, weeks, then whispers turned into acceptance. I grieved him as though he had died. In truth, I think a part of him had long before he ever came home. Years later, I married a good man named William Harper, steady, gentle, patient, the kind of man who builds a life rather than runs from it. We had 3 children, then grandchildren, then great-grandchildren. My life with him was calm, warm, safe, and I'm grateful for every year. But love isn't measured by length. It's measured by depth. And Samuel, oh, Samuel carved a canyon in me. Near my 50th birthday, long after I thought the world had forgotten him, I received a letter. No return address, just my name written in handwriting I knew better than my own. Inside was a single sentence. I never stopped walking, but every road still led back to you. Nothing more.